Hello, and welcome to Pisces season part 2. Mars has moved into Gemini. Um, and a big theme is the nodes right now and how the location of the nodes, Sagittarius and Gemini, are squaring Pisces. So that's what we're going to be playing with and exploring today is the nodal squares that are going on. And Gemini itself, Mars is action. Gemini is being able to see more than one point of view. Very literally, it's also schools and children. It's small business support. So support our small businesses. So I just got to get that little plug in there. um, Gemini's that beginner's mind, that curiosity and the exploration, and I'm going to explore it. And there's also that mirror aspect. So there's a do it twice, maybe come across it twice, hear something twice. Interestingly enough, my son is for the second day in a row trying to send a letter. He tried to send it yesterday. The mail carrier, it just ended up, I think one of the neighborhood kids brought a little note and it ended up in the mailbox, but he's trying again the second time. So hopefully Mars is going to be like, okay, now this letter can go out. It's on its second time. So there's this, Gemini is the twins. So there's that mirror, do it twice feel to it. What about you, Alexis? Good morning.
Yeah, good morning. So we're recording this on May, jumping ahead, March. We're recording this on March 4th, just to give some perspective as
By me.
it's March. But to give some perspective on, Amy mentioned Mars moving into Gemini. It just happened on March 3rd. So we're recording this just in the beginning stages of that. So what we're really feeling, as Amy mentioned, is the shift into Gemini with Mars. He's highlighting that. And it's kind of reminding us of a longer transit of the node. So Amy mentioned the node. So to kind of go into that for a second, the nodes are the north and the south node of the moon. And there are these points that are associated with, the north node is associated with where we're going, kind of purpose moving forward. And the south node is represented by what we're moving away from and kind of these karmic pieces that need to be released, and also the gifts that we need to take with us. So just feeling into north and south node, what that means. And then we have the north node in Gemini, which has been there since May of 2020. So it's been, the nodes, they're in the sign for about a year and a half, a little bit longer. And so they have been there for quite some time. So really, moving into they've been there for almost a year. And they will continue to be in these signs for through basically the end of 2021, because they shift in January of 2022. So really through the rest of the year, we've had some time with them, but we get more time with the nodes where they are. So they're a longer transit, right? So again, the north node is in Gemini, and that means that the south node is opposite in Sagittarius. So we have that access that we're really talking about, because it's being highlighted in many ways. So if we feel into, at the end of February, Jupiter made a trine. So he's in Aquarius. So there's a 120-degree aspecting the north node specifically. We're going to really talk on the north node, but obviously it's aspecting the south node as well. That was kind of, Jupiter's about expansion. So it's like, hey guys, remember this whole piece around the north node has been here. The north node is in a sign that is about curiosity, about beginner's mind, like that childlike curiosity, right? Like bringing us back to this like humbleness of, because Sagittarius is beautiful. It's a sign of the philosopher. It's a sign of the teacher. It's a sign of connection to higher spirituality and higher wisdom.
Joy, abundance.
All the things, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And when the south node is there, the south node, though, can sometimes bring up it's going to highlight both. It's going to highlight the gifts, the things that we need to, like we do, because there is a fine line between trusting in our own wisdom, and we can get knocked off of that a lot. So it's like, trust the gift of the South Node. Trust that you do know more than you think you know, that you are a wise being. And also let go of the thinking you know it all, thinking you know how things work. I know for me, having this been very loud this past week of the nodes being aspected, because also on March 2nd, Mercury trined the North Node as he has gone direct. So we have many things aspecting the nodes, right? So we'll keep dropping in kind of who's aspecting it and going into more of that. But just overall, like, concept is things are hitting the North Node to kind of poke at us and remind us. And for me, it's been this very loud, things I think I know are being turned on their head. Like, it's blowing up the box of what we know. And so that's that South Node being able to let go of the things we think we know, peace.
Mm-hmm.
And so just to like run through the, kind of the dates again. So we had on March 2nd, Mercury trining the North Node. So we just talked about that. And he's about communication, the way we think. So it literally was this way of like, hey, let's take a look at the way we think. Maybe there's a better way to do this. Maybe there is that beginner's mind, that curiosity to kind of bring in. And then Mars entered Gemini on March 3rd, which is the sign of the North Node. And so he will be moving through Gemini and eventually meeting up with the North Node at the end of March. So we have this reminder of the way we are, the way we take action, the way we are in the world, to kind of stop, pause, and have that curiosity, have that, maybe just because, this is what I think, doesn't mean it's true. Maybe I should think about it in a new way. Have that, totally new perspective. Like, I have no idea. And if you can come at it from that place, I think that's when the gifts and because when we're not in that, we create our own struggle, and it can be really painful. So I think the more we open to that, the more we open to this, where the North Node is, because the North Node is teaching us where we want to go, that there will be an ease and a grace that comes.
Absolutely, Alexis. The thing I've been hearing a lot is the phrase, I know for a fact. And that's got that, like, the shadow side of Sagittarius, that shadow side of the self node, that self-righteous, well, I know for a fact. And I've really been, for me, beginner's mind is, well, did you see it with your eyeballs? Did you experience it with your body? Or have you been told this because it's someone else's experience, and you're willing to hand away your power and your curiosity and make it a fact? So it's just been interesting, like, hearing these people be like, well, I know for a fact. And there's just this like ding that happens. And I was like, oh.
And even that, because yes, that is, I think that's like the first step to take, of like, have you actually experienced that? Do you know that in your body, in your bones? And also, I'll just throw in it changes.
Yeah.
Because that's the place that I've been at, is these are things that I've like known, that I have experienced, that I have felt so deeply. And now it's all getting turned on its head. And so even that piece of the things we think we know, not that they aren't true, because they were true, but that we change. And
Yeah.
that is a very Gemini, quality as well, of fast shifting and changing, and reminding us that just because something was true doesn't mean it's going to always be true.
Yeah, there's too many, like, to bring this into the real practical, there's too many moving parts. And because there are so many moving parts, exactly what you said, Alexis, it was true when it was true. And since then, you have hopefully changed and moved and shifted. And those around you have hopefully moved and changed and shifted. And even if they haven't, the rest of the world has. Like, one of the reasons astrology is so appealing is because it is a demonstration of the fact that everything is moving, the aspects are changing, the perspectives are changing. And for me, part of what it feels like we're being asked is to let go of that stagnant, what can be stagnant Sagittarius. I know because I read in an article 10 years ago, because because I saw a TV show about it or whatever.
Yeah.
And moving into that really Gemini, that high mobility of Gemini, the mobility of it, the curiosity of it. For any of you parents out there, think about how fast your children move. I have a 10-year-old boy, and Alexis will attest to this. He moves fast. And it's not that he can't dig into things. It's just that even when he is dug in drawing his comics, he can whip out like an entire comic strip in like 15 minutes. And it's like multi-page, and it's got little figures, and it's got word bubbles, because they move fast. They've got beginner's mind. They have a willingness to not do it right. They have a willingness to fall down and get back up. They have a willingness to run at full speed and crash and get back up. And that is just so Gemini for me.
Oh, it is. Yeah. And Gemini is a sign of, like, yeah, children are the best examples of this because it is very much associated with, if we look at the zodiac wheel, this is one way to look at it. There are many ways to look at it, but one way is if you look at it through life, right? So Aries is a newborn, and Pisces is like, the wise just before they leave this, world. That in the, if you think about it that way, like, okay, well, if Aries is the newborn, Taurus is kind of the toddler, wants to touch everything, wants to like explore, put things in its mouth, right?
For all
Gemini
you
is that
Tauruses out there who love your food.
really rising Taurus. But Gemini is that next stage of, they are a child who is able to now walk and be in the world and has that very they start to ask questions, right? Like, why is it like this? Why, they can start to communicate. And as a parent, I'm sure it's very fun.
They want to know,
Right.
because they're, and it's not that they want to know because they're uncomfortable and not knowing. They want to know because they recognize the beauty of like exploration, of figuring things out, of of playing with it.
Yeah. And there's a beauty in the not knowing. There's a beauty in that they don't know. And there's an awe and a wonder that comes with it. Like, they get to ask questions. And I think we forget that as adults, that we know, and I know I love, because you say this all the time, like, we know a tiny, tiny, tiny fraction of what there is to know. And we forget that, though. We think, as adults, it's like, okay, well, we've had these experiences, we've, learned
Got
certain things.
degrees.
Right. We've had our jobs, we've done these things. And that doesn't, like, that's just like a tiny, tiny fraction of what there is to know. So we forget. And so I think, like, this is the kind of, like, our little role model for the month of March is like this child who's asking questions, who has this wonder and awe, who, even, like, I'm thinking about, even if you see the same thing over and over, like, you go outside and you see like a sunset, like, I am the first person to, like, every single sunset, I'm like, oh my God, it's the most beautiful thing. Like,
Sunset ever. Most
right.
beautiful sunrise ever. The one I'm watching right now.
it's the same sun, but things change. Like where you are changes, where how the clouds and how the light hits changes. That's everything is
The
changing.
angle of the earth in reference to the sun, it's all new every single moment.
Right. And we forget that. We get, stuck in our routine, and this is how, things are. That, yeah, I think it's a beautiful reminder. And then also to bring in, so March 4th, which is today, the day we're recording this, Mercury is conjunct Jupiter. And so they are in Aquarius. And it brings this, because now they have both aspected the node. So Jupiter has aspected the North Node the end of February, and Mercury has just aspected. So there's still this aspect, right? Because we talk about these dates, and just to like also drop this in, that the dates we talk about are the dates of the exact conjunctions, but they stay in these aspects for a period of time. So if we were to look at a chart today, we have still aspecting the nodes, because we have Mercury and Jupiter at 17 degrees of Aquarius, and the North Node is at 15 degrees of Gemini. So they're both aspecting it still, even though the dates we talked about were the exact dates, they're 2 degrees away. Like they are right there. So we have the North Node with Mercury and Jupiter aspecting, making a trine to the North Node. And so today is that, and we'll be in this all week because we're in these for longer periods of time. That and Jupiter's a slow mover, so Jupiter will definitely be aspecting the North Node for a longer period of time, of like thinking bigger, blowing up the box. Jupiter is about expansion, and Mercury is about the way we think. So it's really blowing up the box on the way we think, and reminding us of that North Node piece of, this is where we're moving towards. This is what will help us move, because we're all moving towards our own purpose, our own evolution, however you want to look at it. But it's this collective reminder. The North Node is this, hey, if you embrace this energy of where the North Node is right now, it will help you move towards that. So that's where today we have Mercury and Jupiter at 17 degrees aspecting the North Node. So it's a big expansion of the way we think.
I love, Alexis, you have said I've heard you say a number of times, the North Node is like a flag that waves, and it's like, if you come this way, things could be, you could manifest faster. You could feel like you're evolving, you're raising your consciousness, you're moving into more. And Mercury and like trines are supportive aspects. And this trine is about like willing to let go of what we think we know, where we have been, what we have come from, and whether that's our ancestral lines, whether that's our personal body past, whether it's our education. Everything is changing so much. I also want to kind of just bring in and hold space for the fact that that can feel scary. There can be fear in letting go. I personally opened my back door the other day, and like, just to let my dog outside, and I looked at my backyard and I was like, oh my goodness, like I have this deep fear that if I am not here in this place, in this house, in this state, in this city, that my life will never be this good. And it's something I've never seen before. And I was like, holy buckets. So, like, being willing to see your fear and not run away from it or do anything that's going to cover it up or dilute it. To cover it with delusion, Pisces.
We still have the sun in Pisces, so that's still where we're at there. And yeah, and just to bring in, we are most uncomfortable with our North Node. So yes, there will be fear. There will be, I don't want to go there. That will happen because that is part of the North Node. The South Node is where we're comfortable. It's where that's kind of our default. Like, oh, well, I'm comfortable here. I could just stay here. And the North Node's like, no, come here. Like, it will on a bigger level, like, right, it will be less painful for you, because this is where you're maybe not your little self, but where your soul wants to go.
Where like the highest part of you is like, please go here.
Yes,
Please do this.
right. Where you really want to go, but there's that part of you, that smaller little, fear place that's like, no, we don't want to go there. That's scary. And that always, in my experience, has always been a part of the North Node. Of there is like, it's going to push you. It's uncomfortable. We don't necessarily like it at first, but it will push us and help us get where we want to go. And so, yes, definitely there will be fear. There will be the questioning everything. There will be the no, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
But knowing, right, when we can kind of take a step back, because that is often when we're in it, it's hard to see. But when we can take a step back or call that friend or whatever it is, take a step back and be like, okay, in the greater scheme of things, in the bigger picture, it's okay. It's going to be okay. Like, I've had to say that to myself a lot this week. Like, it's okay. Like, you're going to be okay, and that's just part of it. But that's part of that growth. That is, the North Node is part of our growth. It is pushing us, because if we were to just stay where we are and just stay in the comfort of what we know, we wouldn't be happy there either. We really wouldn't. And so that is kind of, yes, this bigger message of the North Node.
And if we stay in what we know, there's almost a feeling of resignation to, well, this is the best it's going to get.
Yep.
I've won because I know all there is to know, and this is the best it's going to get.
Right. Because we have no idea, basically. We have no idea what is possible. We just, right. And that's a big piece of, we know what we know because we can see it and we can trust it, right? It's harder to trust something we can't see yet. It's harder to trust in the unknown, but that's the challenge of, that is actually more real than we know.
Mm-hmm.
And just to push at us a little more, because, we're not in it enough, the sun squares the North Node on the 5th. So on March 5th, the sun is squaring the North Node. And squares can be challenging, more challenging. They're kind of like a little bit of like push your buttons kind of aspect. And the sun is our identity. The sun is us. So just in case we weren't already in it, the sun is going to be there making a square to the North Node, because the sun is in Pisces, North Node in Gemini, of like, hey, you think you're even, that's a big one, like our identity, like you're going to push at that one. But the sun is going to be pushing, and in many ways, it can show up in many ways, because the sun brings illumination. And so it's squaring the nodes. It's just going to kind of push buttons around what we think we know even more. So just in case we weren't already feeling it, I'm going to square it to be like, I'm going to poke at you just a little bit more.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's I think of squares as they feel rough, they feel challenging, because so many of us can't see around a corner. We can't see around a 90-degree angle. And that not knowing feels like, I don't know if I can go there. I don't know if I can trust that if I turn that corner, if I'm willing to be open to what's around what I can't see, that I'm going to be okay. And we're going to be okay. We're going to be okay. We can do this.
We are. Yeah. Because then we have Pallas on March 7th. Pallas, who is the warrior and the strategist and the higher wisdom, enters Pisces. So she's been in Aquarius for a while, and now she will join. We have some planets that are in Pisces. So we have the sun and Venus, and now Pallas will enter Pisces. We also have Neptune there. So Neptune's been there for a long, long time. He's a very slow mover. So we also have Neptune in his home sign of Pisces. But we have Pallas will be moving in on March 7th as well.
Yeah, and Pallas was pretty comfortable in Aquarius. Pallas is about strategy and wisdom
And the
and
mind.
the mind, and Aquarius is about new thoughts and new ideas and the mind. It's an air sign, and she's comfortable in air. Pisces is a water sign, and while Venus is like, oh, emotion, and I feel so good, and I love Pisces. Pallas is like, I don't know about this. Emotion is like not my game.
Yeah. No, she is about strategy and like, right. She's that warrior. Like she doesn't feel so hot in Pisces.
Yeah, there's this like unexpected emotion because she does strategy. She does wisdom. She does brain things.
Yeah.
So for me, it feels fun that there's our warrior energy standing in this very watery sign, being like, "Ah, I don't know if I want to walk through this room."
Right. And pushing the buttons even more for
Mm.
us because Pisces to me is very much about the unseen and this like mystical water. Like you can't put your hands on it. It's like fog. Like you can't grab it.
Yeah.
And for her, like to grasp the wisdom of that, right? For her to, and it might take a little while because her default is to have a strategy, right? And to be of the mind. Like it's probably going to take Pallas a little bit to get adjusted, but I do have faith that there will be wisdom that, like, and for all of us to feel into like the unknown and that which we can't tangibly hold is hard to trust. So it's going to take some time. But having Pallas there, she is about higher wisdom. So she's going to be able to find eventually the wisdom in, oh, okay. At some point you kind of soften and you kind of surrender into like, okay, well, this is where I am.
Yeah.
Right. I can't change where I am. I may not be comfortable with it, but instead of fighting against it, I can kind of soften into it. And to me, that's, the vision
That's
I have of Pallas.
that's the softening into it is the wisdom piece. That's that's like, oh, well, I'm here, so I can fight this, I can push against it, or I can recognize that this is where I am, and how do I resource myself? How do I support myself? How do I accept that I may not be able to see right now because Neptune's home and Pisces is about the dissolving and the ending and the unknown, and just be here and soften. Because maybe this is just an information gathering time for the warrior. She's just information gathering. Meanwhile, Venus is like, yes, bring me more.
Which, speaking of Venus, we have Venus just 2 days later on March 9th squaring the North Node. So if you haven't noticed, like the North Node's a theme here.
There's a theme.
But Venus squares the North Node. And so this brings another aspect. And we did talk about, squares are a little uncomfortable. It's kind of, pushing buttons. But Venus is comfortable in Pisces. She's exalted in Pisces. So she feels comfortable there. She enjoys being there. She enjoys being in the mystical, unknown, we talked about Venus taking a bath in Pisces. She's just like, yes, I can be here. But that's going to be pushing up against that idea of that North Node piece as well. And Venus is about our self-love and love in general, so relationships. So there may be a piece in poking at relationships, and that also piece of the things we think we know, or even the things we think we want, of really feeling into like it's almost like going a layer deeper, because Pisces to me is deep. It's water and emotion, but it's even deeper. Like we can't exactly put our finger on it. And so it's feeling into, maybe on an intellectual level, I think I want something, or I think I need something in relationship, or even if we look at ourselves, like ways that we can make ourselves, feel fulfilled and be in our own love of self, that maybe there's intellectually we think we know something, but it's pushing us to almost let that go and maybe feel instead. Maybe we don't know, but we can feel it. And that's just as valuable. And maybe we can't necessarily put words to it, or we can't put words to it yet. But that's the piece that I think Venus can bring as she squares the North Node.
Yeah, in Egyptian mythology, there is the intellect of the heart. The Egyptian word for it is Sia. And there is a wisdom and an intellect to our emotions when we meet with them as messengers rather than what is in charge. Feel your feelings. You're sad, cry. And there's a difference between being sad and crying and creating a production about it. Because when we create a production, we are putting on a show and we're letting our feelings run the boat instead of having space for the message.
Mhm.
Wow, that thing really pushed my buttons. I feel really sad. I'm going to play with my Gemini and get curious. I'm going to get curious about why I feel so sad rather than just running off and pouting.
Mhm.
Messengers, everything is here to support us and serve in our evolution and our development. And Venus and the moon want to, the moon, she's doing her own thing right now. Uh, but the moon and Venus, they want to support our sense of intimacy with our own feelings.
Mhm.
And she's just bringing it.
Totally bringing it. Yeah, and that idea of our emotions are messengers, and that it wants to just bring us to that next level, right? Like when you get stuck in it and you create, like you said, when you create a story or you get stuck in it for too long, then you're just stuck. You get swept up in the vortex of what this is creating. And instead of letting it move through you and let it open you, like let it crack you open, and this is the piece that often we don't want to go there. It's like you feel the emotion, maybe you cry, but then do we really want to be completely cracked open? And like that's where the next piece can come, because then you're open and then you have this ability for this beautiful whatever thing that you need in that moment to come through. And I think that's the place that a lot of people don't want to go, because it doesn't
Mhm.
it's uncomfortable, and it cracks us open, but that can be beautiful too.
Yeah.
And I think feeling into like this deeper feeling, right, like that we're talking about with Venus and Pisces, like letting yourself go there and not getting attached to the story, and having that curiosity of like, okay, if I really go here, if I really can surrender over to this, then what will happen? And I promise you, it's always beautiful on the other side. It always, always is.
It is, and it's like what always comes to mind for me is the Japanese pottery where they fill in the cracks with gold. The piece breaks and they fill in the cracks with gold, and what you end up with is a larger vessel. It can hold more. And we have a story, a big cultural story, that heartbreak is bad. We need to avoid having our hearts broken, because once our heart is broken, it can never be whole again. And what energetically ends up happening is the heart gets smaller and smaller and smaller, and it can hold less, it can do less, it can feel less. And when we move into exactly what Alexis spoke about with the allowing it to break, to go all the way, to surrender in and be on the floor in tears, to just allow yourself to hurt that much, that's the gold. That surrender point of allowing it to just go ahead and sweep through you, to crash over you, is the gold. And you're going to end up with a heart that is bigger and it feels more, and it, you've got gold.
Mhm.
That's where like the rich, juicy is. It's the technical term.
Yes. Yes. And we also, because bringing in, it's like we're all like all these things that we're talking about, it's like just bringing us right into the next piece of sun. The sun is conjunct Neptune on March 10th. Yeah. And so I think there's a lot here, but the sun is, and this happens, this happened last year because Neptune has been in Pisces. But I think the gift here is like this appreciating the mystery, appreciating the unseen, because we can go very quickly. Neptune can also be delusion and wanting to numb out, and he's often associated with substances and being in that
Running away.
right, the running away, the numbing out. But part of the beauty is being in the mystery, right? And we went back when we were talking about Pallas, like part of the mind piece, like the mind wants clarity. The mind wants it to look like, okay, I have this strategy, this plan, but there's beauty in the mystery. And so I'm really feeling that piece of like appreciating the mystery and loving being in the mystery. And honestly, if we knew it all, if we knew like our whole, like, and we have choice, so not to say like it's all laid out for us, but if we knew even like the next few steps how it was going to look, like it takes away the mystery. I don't think we would really want that. We think we want that. We think we want to see A all the way to Z. We're not ready for that, first of all. But it takes away the mystery. Like, what fun is that of, like that's just a piece that's coming in too of there is beauty in being the mystery, and that rather than wanting to figure it out, because we're not going to ever know, we're not going to know the whole story, the whole picture, is just being in it, being in the mystery. And Neptune is very much about that dreamy, mystical, kind of beyond the veil place. So yeah.
And that is, I think that's spot on, is be in the not knowing. Because you talk to people, and what is the part that most people really love about a new romantic relationship? It's the not knowing.
Being surprised, the being like, oh wow, like learning, right? Like these new pieces coming in. Yes.
Yeah. And when we can approach our just day-to-day moments with that same enthusiasm and that same healthy growth tension, curiosity, we can fall in love with life rather than having to project out. We can fall in love with what we're living, what we're doing right now. And, yes, Neptune has his shadow side, and he is this beautiful, like, just be in the mystery. Like, it's okay. Don't know. Don't know. Like, be the shaman.
And that's where creativity can come from. Like Neptune is also very much associated with creativity and like the artist. And right, and the artist can look, it doesn't have to just be, painting artist. It can be creativity in many ways, through dance, through writing, through whatever your passion is, like that is an art. And there's this that it, through the mystery, through the being in it, that's where these ideas and these things come, right? Like the best writers don't steer the ship, they kind of become the channel for the ideas to come to them, right? And the best artists, like I think any artist, any writer, any creative person will say when they try to steer the ship, the product, it does not come out right so great. When they can let go, let the ideas come to them. And that can only happen when you're in this mystery, when you're in this,
I don't know.
this unknown place, when you let yourself kind of go to, I keep just like that fog. It's just like this foggy, but it's beautiful. It's a mystery. It's like be in that dream world space and just be in like, I have no idea what's going to come to me, and let it come to you. Like there is this creativity that comes, and that can come in any way. Like it doesn't matter whatever your job or your passion, you could be a CEO of some corporate company. And if you can allow yourself to be in that space, you will get the insight and the thing that will help your company, and that will help, your employees. And so it doesn't matter. You don't have to just be in a more of a creative place for this to happen. It literally can help they may not know it yet, but it can help in every like all areas of life. Yeah.
Yeah, it's going to help with your parenting. It's going to add to your relationships. It's going to add to your home life, like being in your creative, energetic self. Like chakra wise, that's your sacral center. That's your second chakra. That is the seat of creativity and our juice to be like, yeah, I'm over here doing these things and making these, I've decided to go back to, I spoke to somebody recently who was a potter and like recently just took it up again and was like so enlivened by it.
Yeah. This is a really good point to bring up of think of the things that you were interested in either as a young adult or as a child. Think about the things you love that you were passionate about. Are they still a part of your life? Because maybe there can be more, but I feel like there is the potential for things that we've kind of forgotten that we loved at one point, that we loved as a child, or that we loved as, an adolescent. Like there's a chance to bring that back in, because this is what we're in. We're in this Piscean creative and this Gemini, like childlike curiosity. Bring in those things that are passionate, because I've also heard people say recently that they don't have a passion project. They don't have a hobby, or they don't have, right? Like you almost like we forget, because we get in these, I'm an adult and I have a job and I have to take care of, my kids and my house and do my errands. And we forget about the things that light us up. And even for those who still are connected to their passion, there's a chance to kind of go deeper or to look at it in a new way. So I love that you're bringing this idea of like, oh, somebody who was into pottery and they're taking it up again. There's a really, like, just think about it. Just think about it for yourself. Like, what is something that I used to love that I feel like I've gotten away from?
Exactly. And it is interesting because I think so much fell away in 2020 that we as adults used for distractions rather than to fuel our passion.
Yeah.
Is the flip side of I've taken up pottery is I've stepped away from everything that I was doing. Like I don't go to sporting events anymore and I don't go out to eat anymore. And well, are those passions or were they distractions?
Mm-hmm.
And there's the discernment piece too of if we're going to go into this, what fed our child? It may also be time to look at some of those things and be like, oh, that is not something that calls to me anymore. And to energetically cut the cords to those things. Pisces is dissolving, it's the ending. And so if we can energetically cut the cords to maybe things that we had tucked away in our system somewhere, like, oh, I'm going to go back to that someday because those were the glory days. Like it's time to cut those cords and let those go. The universe doesn't do voids. So when you make space in your life with, I'm going to go back to that someday because it was the glory days, you're going to be gifted with something that fills you and speaks to you and is going to expand you right now. So the discernment of, are you reaching for the glory days? Or can you bring in your childlike curiosity and revisit something? Or maybe you need to bring in your Gemini toddler, your Gemini school age kid, and play with it and fall down and play with it some more and fall down some more. And that's what it's going to take to recognize that, oh, I'm just doing this to go through the motions rather than because it feeds me.
Yeah.
So I can let this go. I can let this dissolve and become part of the fog.
Yeah. And if we feel into the astrological calendar, it starts with Aries. So we're in Pisces. We're in the actually end of the astrological year. And so it's a chance to, as you spoke to, it's about dissolving and letting go and endings. And we can, if we feel into the past 12 months on the astrological calendar,
Could
pretty
it
much,
that we're ending something?
it's pretty much right around the time we entered into the lockdown and the pandemic and everything that happened right last March, because Aries season begins this year. The sun moves into Aries on March 20th, right? So if we feel into around last year, that end of March time, like we were in it, right? Like we were okay, without knowing
I
how
had my
long.
first quarantine birthday last year, so I remember.
Yeah, exactly. And so it's a real chance to honor endings, right? Like I think, and we've mentioned this, of as a collective, we're not great at endings, and honoring the end of this cycle so that we can enter into Aries with the new. We can't move on to the new if we're still holding on to pieces of the past. And to honor, and exactly as you said, like even feeling into the last year, there may have been things that we took up to kind of distract us and kind of, okay, we're not going out, like you said, we're not going out to restaurants. Okay, so I'm just, going to have a little night at home and I'm going to watch Netflix. And that's fine. I am not saying don't, but we may have gone too far into that, right? Like we're now Netflix is the thing that we're just, using to,
Often.
right. And so there's a chance to really, have that discernment of what needs to shift, what needs to go, and that, but honor it. Like that helped me get through. That helped me, and it can be whatever. I'm just throwing that out as an example, but whatever it is, like honor that, and also honor the growth. Like we went through a huge foundational like breakdown. We went through a huge shift. Like for most people, it's maybe the biggest shift collectively of their lifetime, because it also was global, right? Like we all go through different shifts in our lives, but in a global collective way, this was a huge thing to be in as a global community. And so honoring, like, okay guys, we made it through some stuff, like we made it through some stuff, and honoring that. And at the same time, so seeing the growth and honoring that, and also, okay, well this got me through, but it doesn't work anymore. Because I think we can all feel like we thought, okay, maybe this will be a couple months, maybe this will be a year, maybe this will, and it's turned into, okay, well everything has shifted, and so now we just have to adjust. And so taking that kind of discernment of, okay, what does need to go, especially feeling into the past 12 months as we move into Aries season.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Just actually moving with what's present rather than trying to project what's coming
Mhm.
or moving from a past model. We've got we've got decisions being made here in the US that, we've got organizations jumping up and down saying don't do this, and we've got state government saying do this. And who knows what's going to happen, but I'm having a good time watching. my my little dark goddess is like,
Right. Like had to happen. Had to happen. And yeah, like we needed such a big shakeup,
Yeah,
right? For
we've been shaken.
we've been yes.
We we have been shaken, and now I think it's almost shaken off the things that are covering up our fear, and we have a choice. Are we going to cover that fear back up, or are we going to look at the fear and surrender to the fear, which is going to allow us to actually go through a reclamation? It's going to allow us to step into something that is, to just tap into that Aquarian energy, more of a humanitarian, global, conscious way of living.
Mhm.
We can upgrade or we cannot.
Mhm.
We get the choice.
Right. And just to touch on the moon, because you brought in the moon, but the moon is waning, right? And releasing. So the moon is also in this releasing phase. We had the full moon at the end of February, and since then has been waning and getting smaller and releasing and letting go and moving us towards this new moon in Pisces that we have on March 13th, which is conjunct Neptune. So we talked about we have the sun conjunct Neptune, and just a couple days later, the moon comes there. So the moon and the sun meet up, and it's right there next to Neptune. And so all of this releasing and letting go is leading us to this new moon, which is a new beginning, right? It's the beginning of a new cycle. And there's always cycles. So I mean, we're talking, right? You can feel it even in, we talked about the year, the 12-month cycle. Then we're
Yep.
talking about this, moon cycle, which is, there's always many cycles going on, but it's this letting go leading us to this new moon in Pisces, which is that shaman. And then to have Neptune there, like the shaman is the bridge between worlds, the seen and the unseen. And Neptune to me is very much, right in there with that Piscean, and almost a little bit more on the unseen, like a little bit more right foot in the unseen. Neptune, we talked about, it's that foggy, mystical. But there's this, with the shaman, there's okay, but bringing it in to the world, because we can also be in the misty unknown and just, have our fun, but there's something about bringing it in to the world. And so this new moon is this kind of chance. And also often with new moons, we don't, and it's perfect because it's, we get a new moon in a different sign, but a new moon in Pisces, we don't always see the full picture with a new moon. There's often an unknown, and there's this, it's the dark moon. You can't see the moon. There's this misty quality, this mystical quality with the moon herself as a new moon.
Mhm.
And so just feeling into that, like we're just getting hit over the head with this message of be in the mystery, like just be in it.
Not picking up what the theme is. We're inviting you to go toward the North Node by stepping into your not knowing. Be in the mystery.
Yeah.
Let go of any messy, self-righteous, I know it, and step into I don't know it.
Mhm.
You got a chance to talk to my son, he'd be like, "Oh yeah, mom always says, I know this much of everything, and you're 10, so you know less than this much of everything."
And Amy has her fingers like
Have my fingers
point.
touching. I know this much, which is like my fingers are touching. Um, so yeah, be in the mystery, be in the not knowing, be in the curious. And there's also that, like, Neptune can push away from the things he doesn't like, the things that are uncomfortable. And I've brought in like being in that fear a couple times. And fear is something we don't like. I mean, I know there are people who like scary movies. I know there are. I don't like to be scared. And at the same time, I can go into my fear. I can see my fear. I just don't like to be scared or scary movies because my nervous system gets all activated and it's bad.
Yeah, and I feel like that's a different
That's a whole
it's
different
a
thing.
different scary. Like it's a different scary to like watch a scary movie, and it's a different scary to be in like my whole life is falling apart fear. Like different. But
Different
yeah,
scary.
and yeah, we all have our own. Who knows? You know,
Are
like
there
dislikes.
yeah, are there any other aspects that we missed?
Yeah, I was going to say just after that, Mercury enters Pisces. So, Mercury, who we've talked about, is the way we think in our communication, who just at the beginning of March was trining the North Node, kind of pushing at that curiosity. He
Mhm.
then enters Pisces on the 15th. So, March 15th, he's now in this Piscean place as well. And so that the way we think, and he's also out of his shadow period, I believe, um, with his retrograde, because he was retrograde recently, went direct, and he's close to being out of his shadow. If it's not, then he's moving out basically because he's in his forward motion. So he's moving into Pisces, and he will continue moving forward. But he enters this like mystical dream world as well. So that's just more, right, more of that energy. Yeah, and that brings us right. There's a few other things happening, but I think for the most part, that's um, you know, the big aspects. And then that brings us to, yeah, on March 20th, the sun enters Aries. So if we feel into everything moving up towards then, yeah, like
It's being the not knowing, being the curious.
yeah,
I just want to bring in, we are hosting a mini workshop on the 13th,
March
um,
13th, yes.
Awakening Through the Chakras. And so that is available and open for registration. Reach out. It's $47. It's an hour. It's online. We're going to record it. So if you can't be there, you can still get it via recording. And then on the 20th, when the sun moves into Aries and we're at that equinox balance point, we are doing a 3-week online retreat. So those things are available. The links are in in all places. There. So if you're watching this on YouTube, it's going to be in the show notes. If you're listening to the podcast, the links will be in the show notes. If you follow either of us on social media, links are in our link trees and all the places.
All places.
All the places.